part 2 of the Dan Richard William Rose debacle. So we left out on the part where Dan is the one that brought Megan into the conversation. And this is the oxymoron of this whole article, which is how he first tried to paint Kate as this social climbing mean girl who thinks she's running-ish with these blue bloods because her husband has a title, not realizing they are the ones with the money and the power. But then goes on to victimize her by writing this. The newly independent Kate that has emerged over the past year has delighted those inside the royal family. Already adored by staff for her down-to-earth approach, Kate was, as I previously revealed, the first to stand up to her sister-in-law, Meghan, 37, over the way she spoke to her staff. The tension between the future queen and Meghan, along with the imminent split of the royal households, has emboldened the Duchess, who is growing more comfortable with her public role. And wait for it, Kensington Palace declined to comment last night. Now, notice that it was Dan who was the one that introduced Meghan to this conversation. He also had to throw it in there that he was the one who previously revealed that Kate had said something to Meghan about the way she spoke with her staff, which we all know was BS, by the way. And he also implied, in a sense, that Meghan could possibly be the reason why, or could possibly be the cause of Kate's sudden mean girl behavior, the mean girl behavior that they had been hitting at for the past, 11 years. Because there was no mention of Meghan at all in this article, or the implication that Kate being a mean girl, because remember, this was a small column that everybody ignored, except for Dan. And this was basically another Rose fluff piece, and it didn't really gain that much attention. And I think that's when Dan came slithering in my opinion, found his way to get inside of the club that he's been so desperate to get into. Because not long after that article was published in The Sun, Dan eventually moved on to the Daily Fail. Now, that could mean several things, like The Sun and Dan being revealed in this 2020 Byline Times report for paying off a Kensington Palace official for information about Harry and Meghan. According to the Byline Times report, it was revealed that The Sun had made 2 payments amounting to £4,000 to Callum Stevens, who at the time was in a relationship with Christian Jones, Prince William's private secretary. Now, from that report, this is how Alexis was able to piece together and show how the information was leaked from Kensington Palace to Dan Wooten, and how 2 articles which were related to Prince Archie's nanny and godparents were basically included in this report and linked to that payment. Here's a snapshot of the article, and you can find the full report on bylinetimes.com, or you can go find it on their Twitter X page, because this is very sus. Now, in my opinion, he jumped on this opportunity mainly for monetary gains, but also because this allowed him to use his knowledge about this alleged beef, by bringing more attention to it, of course, and making it more about than just Kate's Celia Rayfoot complex. And it's clear as day that Danny has a lot of dirt on these people, and he made it clear when he wrote this article. In my opinion, he decided to use this tea because he needed to trade information to get stories about Harry and Meghan. So I think this was kind of his way of putting it out there, like, yeah, I know, so you guys need to come talk to me and maybe we can swap something out or make a deal, because remember what Benjamin said. And if you remember, a few of these clips from the Netflix documentary where both Harry and Meghan stated that the palace was briefing the press by trading stories about them.
The saddest part of it was this wedge created between myself and my brother, so that he's now on the institution side.
And he accuses his brother's press officials of briefing the media against him and his wife. The palace even publishing a statement on behalf of both brothers, he says, that he did not approve.
They were happy to lie to protect my brother. And yet, for 3 years, they were never willing to tell the truth to protect us.
You would just see it play out. Like a story about someone in the family would pop up for a minute, and they go, we got to make that go away. But there's real estate on a website homepage. There is real estate there on a newspaper front cover, and something has to be filled in there about someone.
Now, after reading both articles in full, I believe that Dan, while piggybacking off of Richard's column, sees an opportunity to jump on the Meghan hate train. Remember, billion-dollar-pound industry in the UK. And at that time, I'm sure Dan was doing good, but celebrity gossip just wasn't really paying the bills the way he wanted them to. And then, of course, if you think about it, he was the first one to even mention her name. And on top of that, he included this picture of Rose and Harry from 2017 with this caption. The rest of the article was mostly attacks towards Meghan. He blamed Meghan for Harry falling out with old friends after they met. But what neither article implied was that there was a beef over an affair. So in my opinion, he was already setting that up. Well, he was setting the bait up for that. And I think it worked because 2 days after that article was published, here comes Richard K., who responded with this ridiculous 4-page letter. And I believe it was this article, now this is just my opinion, which further confirmed that this was more than just a rumored disagreement, but more so a Charles, Diana, and Camilla type of situation. Now, I already went over this in my previous video. If you haven't seen it, you might want to go back and watch it for context. But I think personally someone didn't like Dan's article because they completely ignored Richard's, right along with everyone else. Because as stated, Richard, in a failed attempt to deny these fallout rumors, responded with this ridiculous 4-page letter. And he, unintentionally or not, he enclosed it with a smoking pew-pew. Tom Sykes reported in the Daily Beast that it was these two quotes here that kind of alluded to the fact that this might be more than just a simple disagreement between two homegirls. Because I'm trying to understand how this would be a threat to disrupt their domestic tranquility and why they need to lawyer up over a simple disagreement. Now, this article was very similar to the other ones, which was a bunch of fluff, basically gassing up these rich aristocratic snobs and telling us how they have more money than the royals. And it's also clear that someone on William's team has to be the source because they made sure to let it be known that he was no peacemaker, this ain't Jerry Springer, and Kate wasn't trying to phase sis out. Well, technically, she doesn't have the power to do so. He dismissed it as pure tittle-tattle to make Kate look bad, so we know which one put the pressure on Will. But then he contradicted both Dan and Richard's article by saying they weren't really cool like that, because he implies that they never really had a close friendship. They only been to each other's house 3 times. But then if you read Dan and Richard's article, you would think these girls were BFFs. Now, here is where I think Richard K. took Dan Wooten's bait on that talking point implying that Meghan could be the cause of that article. You guys might want to pause to read here because this is just utterly ridiculous. And I personally believe that article is why Tom Sykes came to the conclusion that he did, as well as everybody else who were speculating that this must have been an affair between Rose and William. But it's clear that Richard was the one who planted the seed in the media. Dan Wooten, he watered it, and Richard K. helped plant that seed by shining too much light, in my opinion, on something that should have been ignored. Whatever happened to never complain, never explain. Now, personally, I believe this was all a ploy to find a way to get exclusives from the palace to trash tabloids like the Daily Mail. Because after all, this did begin with them. Dan and Richard have been getting exclusives from the palace, so that doesn't seem odd. Kate has benefited significantly from all the Meghan hate. Plus, I think she also has it out there that her husband may be having an affair, so she could use that to her advantage. And Rose will forever now be remembered as William's alleged mistress, regardless if it gets proven to be truthful or not. Now, personally, I think it was Rose or somebody adjacent to her who actually put the story out to Richard and then brought it to Dan Wooten in the first place, but I feel like Meghan was the sacrificial lamb for this information to be buried. Let me know what your thoughts are on this situation, and make sure you like, comment, and share.